Hi, this is Dan Quigley. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is like to be on a board of directors for an association. The title of the webinar is Board Orientation, and it is presented by Kirkpatrick Management. This is a presentation that we originally gave on February 6th to about 75 to 100 board of directors from different associations throughout central Indiana. So we're going to put this together and let you guys see what's going on. I'll talk a little bit about what Kirkpatrick Management is. Kirkpatrick Management was started in 1973 by Robert Kirkpatrick. His first two associations, or his first association and first cooperative, are still with the company from 1973. We have grown to about 280 associations at this time that we manage. And as far as the cooperatives, we are over 35 at this time. It's a family-owned business. Rob Kirkpatrick, the founder's son, owns the company right now. There's actually 7 Kirkpatricks that work in the company at this time, and still very much a family business. But what we decided to do is we are very big about education for us, for our association managers, education for our board of directors. What this is KMC ABC. That is the association board something. We'll come back to that. But we are very big on education, and what we want this to do is just kind of give you guys ideas on best practices for being on a board, how to handle yourself, give you some ideas on situations at the board and what your duties are at being on the board. We'll start with a purpose of a community association. People choose to live in a community association for numerous reasons. Many associations are very valuable and offer a lot of benefits to the community that is living there. Community associations are designed to manage common areas of the property, manage property interests of the owners, provide services for owners, develop a sense of community. These were started in 1950s, community associations were, and what the idea was when everybody was moving out of the industrial parts of the city, moving out into the highway structure was being built, and so people were moving out into the suburbs at that time, they needed to have associations built up. So to help spend the money wisely and take care of the common area wisely for these neighborhoods. So that is where the community association came from. Right now, in the United States, there are 300,000 community associations in the United States. Over 60 million people are in a community association in the United States, which is a pretty huge number. So basically, that's 1 out of every 6 Americans are in a community association. We are located in Indiana. In Indiana, there are 970,000 people who live in a community association and 4,800 associations in the state of Indiana. And what that means in monetary figures, it is actually, we're handling associations, these 4,800 associations are handling $1.3 billion in assessments each year. That's a big business. That's a lot going on. It makes it worthwhile for you as a board member to do it right, and to try and do it right the first time. You have a duty to your neighborhood, and we try as Kirkpatrick Management to show you the best way to do that. Next slide is a governing documents. I want to kind of start with the third point down, which is to create a binding relationship between each owner and the association. In the state of Indiana, go ahead and tell you that, state of Indiana, the title company signs up every owner to their association. So when you're in a title company and you're signing 75 pages to buy a home, in that is the contract that says you are going to be part of this association. Sometimes as board members, you're walking around, you got somebody who comes up to you and says, hey, I didn't really want to be part of this association. I never signed anything. They did. It's something that's done by the title companies. You know, from time to time, we do have to go and find those pieces of paper. The title company's got it. And, you know, and where it says that, hey, I belong to the association and it's a binding relationship. And so it's something where they are agreeing to work with the association and to, it's between each owner and the association. So it really makes everybody who is in the association, lives in the neighborhood, is part of the association. I'm going to go to the hierarchy of authority. This graphic is very is very useful because it kind of shows you, as board members, you've got all these documents and you've got a declaration, you have bylaws, you have rules and regulations. Because a lot of times those documents say something a little bit different, but this kind of puts it in perspective on what has the authority on all this. And you'll see it's a nice little pyramid. At the top of it is the recorded map, plot, or plan. But above all that is the municipalities, meaning that if you live in Indiana and you have an association, if you live in the city of Noblesville, the city of Noblesville rules trump your association rules. Let me give you an example of that. There's an association in Noblesville, and we just took it over a couple years ago, but their documents, their bylaws say that no car can be parked on the street. And it can't be parked. They're trying to keep the streets clean. You cannot park on the street. Well, the street is actually owned by the city of Noblesville, and the city of Noblesville's laws trump that, because the city of Noblesville says that, hey, you're allowed to park on the street for 72 hours if you need to. And so it was something where we've been getting calls from owners saying, hey, can you get this car out of it? They park here every night. It's an eyesore, but really there's nothing they can do. They are going by the laws of the city, and the city laws really govern that instance. There are some ideas. That was an HOA. A lot of times with the condos, those condos have their own streets. They own their own streets. At that point, they can make laws like that. So if it was in a condominium association and that was a private street that everybody in that neighborhood chipped in and they all paid for, then we could get that car towed. But when it's on a city street, you have to go by city laws. But so that's where the hierarchy is for governing documents of a community association. One of the things I did want to talk about on there is the bottom one below down there. It says the board resolutions. A board resolution is meant to clarify your declarations or your rules and regulations. It's supposed to really kind of dig down in there and help clarify things. Let me give you an example. Here in Indianapolis, we have an association by the name of Sycamore, and one of their subdivisions or one of their sub-associations is called Courtyard Homes. Well, those are two homes that share a roof, and because they are HUD, they each own part of that roof. So that makes it kind of difficult. So if two owners own a roof, what do you do if there's a hailstorm? What do you do if you've got a leak? How do you handle that? The board of directors of Courtyard Homes got together and they put together a board resolution. Who owns the roof and what the percentage is and how to fix it, and also some specifications of if you are going to fix it, how you would do that, what you do at that point. So the board would take care of that. They would write up the resolution. Your property manager would help with that. And then that needs to be distributed to all the owners. Once it is distributed to all the owners, everybody's got a copy of it, then it's a legal document as far as you work with that all day long. The resolutions really help on, just clarifying things. That's really what it's there. The community fees, this one's pretty self-explanatory. Read along through there, but the community associations all have fees or assessments that must be paid to the association. Depending on the association, the assessments must be paid monthly, quarterly, or annually. Usually, most of the HOAs, they're going to be either quarterly or annually, and most of the condos are going to be monthly. And it varies from place to place. Every neighborhood is different as far as what the dues go for. In the city of Indianapolis, garbage collection is paid for by your taxes, but in the city of Fishers, garbage collection is paid for by the association. They have to pay for it. You have a garbage contract, and you do that. So looking at your documents is really going to help you on that. But this is really what the fees are for. A lot of times, homeowners will call into the board or they'll call into the management company and say, "Where are my fees for? I'm paying $700 a year, and I don't know what they go for." A lot of times, we'll go through and show them in the documents where everything is. The other way to take a look at this is to give them a copy of the budget, which they are allowed to have as owners if they ask for it. So a lot of times, if we give them a copy of the budget, it'll break all this down and they'll see, hey, I didn't know I had to pay for sewer. I didn't know I had to pay for trash. It really kind of helps you on the community fees. Community governance. We're going to talk a little bit about the different puzzle pieces that put together the association. We'll go through, and you can see down here is a nice little graphic that shows the puzzle pieces, and in the end we'll put it all together. But one of the most important part of association is the owners. What do the owners do for the association? they are obligated to adhere to the restrictions of the governing documents. That's one of the things. But what they do help with is every year at the annual meeting, they are the ones who elect the board of directors. They're gonna elect the members of the board, and so you need to do that, and that's what they'll help with. And they also help. They have the power to help amend the declarations. So in the state of Indiana, they sometimes it varies. Sometimes it's 67%. You need to amend the document. Sometimes it's 75%. The state of Indiana has passed a law in 2015 that has the maximum amount that you need to pass an amendment is 75%. The reason they did that is some neighborhoods, we've got two of them in the Fishers-Geist area, they're right next to each other. Their developer that wrote their documents, and in it, he didn't want anything changed. He thought they were perfect. So he said that they have to have 99.9% of the owners approve any changes to the documents. Well, the state of Indiana stepped in on that and said, listen, you need 75%. 75% is the maximum you would need. And 75% is still a large number. I mean, if you've got 400 homes in your community, 700 homes, 1,500 homes, getting 75% of anything is incredible. And so that's what your owners are for. Your owners are they're obligated to share in the financial operation of the community by paying their assessments, but they also help elect the board members, and they also help amend the declaration and the bylaws. We're going to talk a little bit about the president of the association. I'll start with this first sentence. The president is the chief executive officer of the association and represents the board before the membership. One of the biggest things we would like to say is that an association is a business and it's not a club. You're there to do business. You're playing with, sometimes, some neighborhoods have $1 million that you're working with every year. The fees and the different things that you're collecting. So that's why the president of the association needs to be a leader. They need to have a good, strong, to get things done in your association, whether it's a huge, large HOA or a smaller condo association, the person needs to be able to lead a group and be able to take a little bit of criticism from time to time on, maybe somebody from the outside thinking that it should be done differently. I'll give you an example. I have an association in Fishers that I work with, very strong president. He comes in and never a doubt when he walks in the room who's in charge, but he also backs it up by being very businesslike. 2 weeks before the meeting, he puts out an agenda for the meeting. One to everybody in the neighborhood. 1 week before the meeting, the board members get the agenda. When he handles the meeting, there is a very business atmosphere to the meeting. It goes by the agenda. It goes step by step. You start at the beginning and you finish at the end. That association is very strong. The members get it. They realize that their money is being well spent, and that they like having this guy at the helm because they know that things are going to be done in a business fashion. We had another association, which we don't manage anymore, where the president was trying to, not in a bad way, but was more worried about being popular and not rocking the boat than getting things done that needed to be done. Their meetings were incredibly frustrating because there was people in the back raising their hands the whole time to ask questions. They thought that all the homeowners should vote on things. It just really, she was a nice lady, but really she needed somebody else to be the leader of that pack because they couldn't get anything done. And she was voted out of the board just because she wasn't able to get things done. But the president is really, he also signs every contract. And so when you've got contracts, landscape contracts, pond contracts, pool contracts, the association manager gets those together for you, but he's not the person that needs to sign that contract. The president of the association is the person who signs the contract. So there are a couple of smaller associations where they have to have 2 signatures, or older associations where they have to have 2 signatures, but the state of Indiana allows the president just to sign the contract, and so then it is legal. But they are also responsible for board resolutions if things need to be carried out. And so it's an important position. A strong president makes for a strong association, makes for a good business, just like anything else. The vice president is really the backup to the president. There's very few. A lot of these a lot of these condominium associations have 12 meetings a year, 13 meetings a year. Very difficult for somebody who's a volunteer, you're all volunteers, who's a volunteer to make all of those meetings. So the vice president will step in and run a couple meetings in the president's absence. They are also very good at taking off some of the burden from the president. A lot of times they'll chair the architectural committee, which is very important in HOAs and not as much in the condominium associations. Maybe the landscape committee, maybe the finance committee, but a lot of times the vice president will chair another large committee just to kind of take that off the president's plate. Let him be the chairman of the board, and let them do committees that make the neighborhood hum. It also is usually assigned to the liaison to some special projects. A lot of times the vice president will be in charge of the pool, or once again the landscape contract. So a lot of the committees, I'm going to talk just for a second about committees. We love committees, but they don't get to vote unless they're on the board. So that's why a lot of times there's a lot of landscape committees out there. There's a lot of rules committees. There's a lot of finance committees out there. And what they need to do is they can give the association and the board of directors some leadership and some suggestions on the way things can be done. But larger decisions like finance and landscape contractor, those need to be voted on at the board level. That's why it's good for a vice president or a member at large to be on one of those committees and also to be chairing that committee so that they can bring their knowledge to the board meeting and say, hey, this is what our committee's decided on, this is what's best. A landscape committee, they'll do all kinds of things. They'll go out and, they'll talk to all the landscapers, they'll interview them. They're really passionate about it, but, they're not the ones who have the final say. It's the board of directors. The board of directors is elected by the homeowners, and they're the ones who decide the contracts. The secretary is a very important position because they are the liaison of the board to the community. They are the ones who translate these meetings that we have to the association members. They take the minutes. They inform the residents of any upcoming meetings. They are the ones who kind of have, they're probably going to have a little bit of a background on the Indiana state law so they can make sure you're not doing something you shouldn't do. They also kind of back up the community association manager to make sure that they are storing all these things. We store all the minutes and documents at our office on either Caliber, which is our management system, or on Dropbox, which is where we store everything. They keep the minutes for the board meeting. We talked about that, but they also it's very important for them to record all votes, because a lot of times you walk around the neighborhood and who decided to make the pond purple this year? Well, it was a board decision, and we can go back, the owners can go back and look, say if it was 3-2, they voted on this. They need to record the votes. They need to make sure that there is a majority on a proposition that is passed, and that is their job to do that and to count those votes. And especially at an annual meeting, a lot of times the secretary is the one who will get together with the manager and count up the votes just to make sure that those are all tallied correctly and in the minutes correctly. The treasurer oversees the preparation of the annual budget, ensures that all financial transactions are documented, reviews all financial statements prepared by management, recommends action regarding collections, and authorizes an independent audit. So you don't need to be an accountant to be the treasurer of the association. You have a management company. Most of the time, if you're listening to this, you have a management company, and that management company does the books for you. So what you need to do is, if you are a kind of person who just checks your bank accounts on the 15th of every month when your mortgage is coming out just to make sure that there's money in there, probably shouldn't be the treasurer. But if you're the kind of guy who checks your statement online and makes sure that he sees every transaction coming and going, you can do the treasurer's job. Because really, a lot of the things that the treasurer will do, they will check registers just to make sure that, if the right checks are going to their account. We have, even here, we don't have that many neighborhoods. We're not by far the largest in the nation, but we actually have 5 different associations with the word villas at the beginning. So sometimes, even though we try and we have lots of checks and balances, sometimes a check will be paid for by the wrong association. And a lot of times a treasurer will catch that. Because if you've got Nick's Landscaping you paid $3,000 for the November invoice, and you don't have Nick's Landscaping, you have GT Services, well, you need to get a hold of the accountant at Kirkpatrick or at your management company and say, hey, you made a mistake. It happens from time to time, but usually not very often anymore. The way things are with electronics and backing up everybody's information, we seem to get a lot of this right. So that's a little bit on the treasurer. Very important job, and it really helps the association hum along. It's something where you really are going to be the kind of, you might be the only one in the whole neighborhood who reads the budget and reads the transaction, but it's your duty at that point as the treasurer to do that. Member at large. It's usually a first-year board member. They do vote at the meetings, and they oversee a lot of special projects. They might be the social media director. They might be in charge of community events, supervise, the pool, lifeguards, different things like that. But it is a lot of times the first-time homeowner, first-time board member. Sometimes it can be a disgruntled homeowner who wants to come in and change the world and says, well, I hate these guys. You guys don't ever do anything I want to do. But bring them in, let them sit on the board. They get to vote. Their vote means just as much as everybody else's vote in there. If you do have a disgruntled homeowner come on the board, who runs for the board, gets on the board, and they want to change everything, a lot of times the best place for them is the secretary, because at that point they are the person they're the gatekeeper. They're seeing everything as it comes and goes. They get to see all the financials. They count all the votes. And it really kind of shows that we don't have anything to hide. It's the best place for them. A lot of times after a couple months as the secretary, they get it. They're like, okay, so this is really is a business. You guys aren't just sitting around talking about people drinking wine and handing out fines. It's a good place for a new person. A member at large can come in. He's a first-year person, but member at large, they still vote. Everybody votes, and so their vote means just as much as everybody else. And a lot of times, the glue to everything is the community association manager. That is what Kirkpatrick Management does. We are a business partner for the association. We do not take minutes because we're a partner. We're a vendor. We don't really want us taking minutes for the association. But our job is really to kind of hold everything together. What we want to do, we are the liaison between all the different community committees. We have full disclosure if there's a conflict of interest for us. We just try and make sure that we are the jugglers. We're keeping everything going there. We're the managers. So we work together with all the board of directors and tie everything in at the end. And that's really where there's some different things as far as, we want to make sure that even though the community association manager feels like part of the board, they don't live there. They're the only one. You're all volunteers. They're the only ones getting paid to come out here. So just make sure that you know that and that they are, they don't get to vote. So, they can give their opinion sometimes, and a lot of times they're the ones going out and grabbing bids. So you're going to get their opinion anyway, but they're really the glue that's supposed to be holding together that board. And so you can see here, really, you've got the president, the secretary, the vice president, the treasurer, member at large, and all the different pieces. A cool little graphic there kind of showing it all being held together. It helps if the board works together. There's too many boards that work against each other and nothing gets done. If you work together, really, it's pretty easy to get a lot of stuff done and to do good for the community. We're going to talk a little bit about board meetings. Not a whole lot about board meetings because you guys all know board meetings, but we'll talk about a successful board meeting. What it takes to have a successful board meeting. There is a meeting. The best thing to have is, in our opinion, is to make sure that there's a meeting agenda. You get it out to the board a week ahead of time so that they know what's going on. It's a good reminder. Hey, next Wednesday I've got a board meeting. But it also reminds me, oh, that's right, we're going to talk about landscaping. We're going to talk about the pool. We're going to talk about a sewage leak. We're going to talk about different things. So a good meeting agenda is a good reminder. Getting that out a week ahead of the meeting is really great. Here at Kirkpatrick, we get the financials and the management report to the board of directors 48 hours before the meeting. And the reason we do that is because there's nothing that slows down a meeting more than the board. We come in, we hand out 5 packets of bids and reports, and you just have to spend the first half hour reading over the report or looking at this up, looking that up. If we could get it to you 48 hours ahead of time, even if you spend 20 minutes looking at it before you come to the meeting, or the night before looking at some different things. A lot of times there's bids in there, and you want to look at the different bids. So you have a board of directors has a fiduciary duty to use the money of the association correctly and wisely. It really helps if you take a look at the board meeting packet 48 hours ahead of time. A reasonable meeting for an HOA meeting is about 60 minutes, because there's just not, that can get everything done. You can do an HOA meeting in an hour. That's enough time to get going. Once again, we talked about it. It's a business meeting. It's not time to chit chat. If you stick to the agenda, you should be able to get HOA meetings done in 60 minutes. COA meetings done in about 90. That just gives you a little bit of an idea. In the state of Indiana, homeowners are allowed to come to every meeting. They can come at every meeting. A lot of times I have associations where they'll put a little section, maybe a half an hour before the meeting for the homeowners to talk to the board, or maybe I have another neighborhood that has it at the end of the meeting so they can discuss things that happened at the meeting. And so that's nice for them to be able to do that. But in the state of Indiana, it is the owners are allowed to attend the meeting, but they're not allowed to participate in it. They're not allowed to participate in the meeting. So they don't vote. They don't get to give their opinion on who they think the landscaper should be. Sometimes the board president will ask for advice if there's somebody in there. Sometimes there's an ex-electrician in the crowd. That, sometimes they might ask him for ideas, but usually they've done their due diligence and we're kind of coming with ideas. Just remember that it's a business meeting, and a lot of times there's some neighborhoods where they bring a bottle of wine and they all sit around and drink some beer and drink some wine, drink some beer, and that usually makes the meeting go a little bit longer, but you don't want to do too much of that because you're just trying to get in and out of it. Everybody's volunteering. The executive session. So the executive session is closed to the owner. So that's you would adjourn the meeting and go into an executive session at the end of the meeting. What happens there is that they would talk about the delinquencies and any legal issues. That is private information and cannot be shared with all the owners. Lots of neighborhoods have delinquencies. What you need to do is, get everybody out of the room who's not a board member or the management company and talk about those things and see what the next step is. A lot of those decisions are made by the president and the treasurer as far as pursuing delinquencies. But if there's something odd or something new, then the whole board would like to talk about that a lot of times. Or if there's a lawsuit going on, you want to have that in the executive session, because definitely that's something where there's privacy involved. What I'm going to do now is talk about the 4 essential duties for the board of directors. Those 4 essential duties are: number 1, the duty of care; number 2, the duty of loyalty; number 3, the duty of obedience; and number 4, the duty of confidentiality. The duty of care requires a board member to make a decision in good faith, in the best interest of the association, and prudently. Acting in good faith is tricky for a board member. It doesn't sound like it should be, but a lot of times it's easier to take care of the squeaky wheel rather than do things in the time that you get them. A lot of times, if there's a roof leak, that's going to take precedence over somebody whose gutter is off the side of the building. But you also want to make sure that you are, as hard as it is, you want to make sure that, number 1, you're not taking care of your buddies who live next door to you. But number 2, you want to make sure that you are not, it's human nature, you want to make sure that you're not punishing anybody either. So you got this lady who lets her dog poop in the sidewalk, 6 months a year, but she's got a leak in her attic. I don't want to fix that leak in her attic. That's not really the way things are done. You need to do that. You can deal with those 2 issues separately. But that's what they're talking about, acting with honesty, fairness, and with good intentions. You also need to work in the best interest of the association. Your decisions are going to be scrutinized. That's really what the minutes are for, and what the homeowners are allowed to see the minutes. And so a lot of times, if there's a controversial decision, they're going to pull up the minutes and they're going to want to read that. That's why it's very important for the secretary to document everything for the meeting. That's the best interest of the association. To be prudent. This one's pretty easy, and a lot of you are already doing this just because you are part of the board. You're the ones volunteering to be on this board. A lot of people come to the board with agendas, and then they're off in 2 weeks once they get there. They wanted to make sure that their neighbor had to take down their poles that are sitting outside the yard, and once they get that down, then they're going to retire. All of a sudden they're busy, need to get off the board. That's not really what we're talking about. But as far as being prudent in the duty of care, just ask a lot of questions. Just make sure you're following the governing documents. Attend the board meetings, review the board packet. Just do what you're supposed to do. It's not, if a management company is doing the job correctly, this shouldn't be a full-time job. This should be something where, maybe a couple hours a week, a couple hours a month that you need to spend and help this, but it's good for the association. Some people can do a good job at it and really like doing it. Some people it's not any fun. So and you guys you're all volunteers, so make sure you're having a little bit of fun at this. And when it doesn't get any fun anymore, it's probably time to end your career as a HOA volunteer. You can find other things to do, but it's a thankless job. It's very tough for you guys to walk around the neighborhood and be on the board. Everybody thinks that you can get things done for them, and that's not really the way. There's no them. It's an us. The duty of loyalty. The duty of loyalty requires every director to be loyal to the corporate entity of the association, and this primarily relates to conflict of interest. A conflict of interest exists whenever any contract, transaction, or any other action taken by or on behalf of the association would financially benefit a director or a party related to the director. So this conflict of interest, it does not mean that if you are married to the best landscaper in town that he cannot be the landscaper for the association. What that means is you need to have full disclosure. You need to make sure that everybody knows that you maybe have closed bids for the landscaping. Maybe you don't need to sacrifice services because you're related to somebody. But it really just kind of helps just to make sure that you are getting you're not getting any financial benefit. But if you are, you just make sure that everybody knows that. And I think that's fair. Just make sure it's in the documents. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you are keeping the best interest of the association in mind when choosing the contractor. And sometimes that contractor might live in the neighborhood. It might be a friend. But just make sure that there's full disclosure and transparency when you're doing that. It's just very important. And also make sure that the secretary documents all the votes on this so that they don't think that you just kind of pushed your friend through and you want to make sure that he got the job. The duty of obedience is a pretty easy one, but you owe it to the association to obey the governing documents and obey the laws. There's nothing worse than us having to write a violation to a board member who won't adhere to the governing documents. It happens. Sometimes you forget to bring your trash can in, or sometimes you go on vacation and your grass gets too long. But really, you need to be the leader of the association. You need to be the one who is showing the way things go. So you cut your grass, make sure your trash cans are in. You gotta practice what you preach. That's really what you want to do in all your affairs. So that helps a little bit. Lastly, it's the duty of confidentiality. So board members are going to have access to private and confidential information, and that information must remain confidential. There are, sometimes an individual can't pay their bill on time. They're maybe going through a bankruptcy. There's something going on. As a board member, you're going to be privy to that information. It really needs to be something that you keep to yourself because it's really not anything that you should be sharing with your neighbors. Sometimes it's hard. You got a guy down the hallway that is down the hall from you who is having parties all day and night, but he can't pay his dues, and that kind of bothers you. Well, you have to be able to separate one from the other. You can. I wouldn't go around telling people, hey, he shouldn't be having a party because he can't even pay his dues. No, take it up in privacy, take care of it. But confidentiality, the two shouldn't mix. If somebody's doing something they shouldn't do, they don't need to. They don't need to suffer because of another reason. So try and keep it all. This says a director should not individually disclose information about the association's activities unless they are already known by the members or part of the association's records. In the normal course of business, a director should treat all matters involving the association as confidential until there has been a general disclosure, such as a board meeting or owner's meeting, or unless the information is part of the records available to the members for inspection, then it's resolution. So, you don't want to go and You got a new landscaper. I got, Jed's Landscaping is working in my neighborhood. He's been there 10 years, but this year we had, we went out, got bids, and you know what? Jed isn't going to get the landscaping. Fred is going to get the landscaping. Fred's landscape is going to get the landscaping. Well, let's wait until we actually don't come out of that meeting and tell all the neighbors about it. Big deal, because you're going to know some stuff, and it's human nature. It's kind of cool to know things people don't know. But what we're asking you as part of your board is to keep that kind of stuff confidential. Liability protection. This is pretty easy for you guys to do. Every association and every board of directors is going to have directors and officers insurance. That really is basically protecting you as long as you are acting in good faith. The Indiana Non-for-Profit Corporations Act provides indemnity protections for directors acting in good faith. And you get back up on that with the D&O. But you can minimize your risks by, we talked about this through the whole thing, but I'm going to go down it because it's important. Minimize risks by reading and knowing your documents, keeping good records, making decisions with a view towards the best interest of the whole and not of the few, diligently collecting assessments and enforcing covenants, not making decisions based on emotions. Remember, you are running a corporation and not a club. Communicate effectively with your board members and the owners. And number 8 is a big deal, I think, is partner with the experts, managers, attorneys, CPAs, engineers, insurance professionals. The really acting in good faith is the best thing to do. Is you don't want to get legal advice from your next door neighbor who saw it on divorce court. You want to make sure you pay professionals. Same thing with engineers. A lot of times we had a neighborhood around the corner from here called Spruce Knoll. They were getting new asphalt. I think it was like 2017. And I was the property manager, and I thought, you know what? I used to be a contractor. I can get this done. So I went out and I got about 5 bids for that asphalt. Well, I'll be darned if those bids didn't come in to do the whole neighborhood. One guy was going to do it for $60,000, and then there's another guy who was going to do it for $185,000. And I had no idea what I was doing at that point. I thought asphalt was asphalt, and it's not. We went out and hired an engineer, paid him a couple $1,000, and he redid everything, came in under budget, gave the association exactly what they needed. And you know what? It was good for everybody. They were protected. The association was protected because they were using a professional. And quite honestly, I thought I knew what I was doing, but they got a much better product by hiring a professional, getting an engineer in there who knew asphalt, who knew what was right. So that's the end of our presentation. If you've got any questions, you can contact me directly. My email is on here, dquigley@ekirkpatrick.com, and my phone number is 317-558-5340. We do have people answering the phones from 9 to 5 every day. There's 7 or 8 people who answer phones all day long. They're just right in our office here, and they'd love to talk to you. Stay tuned. We're going to have more webinars down the road, and we'll talk a little bit more in the future. Appreciate your time. Thank you.